The first thing that caught my attention was the waiter's hand on my arm. Not rough or impolite, just firm enough to stop me as I reached for the dessert menu I had been coveting. He bent over the small bistro table and lowered his voice until it was almost a whisper. "Are you Sophia Ants? Are you Daniel's mother?" I nodded because my voice had suddenly failed me. He gave me a quiet warning about my daughter-in-law's family, about how they lived without a care while still calling my son for money every month. His eyes held the kind of worry you only ever see on people who have watched something go wrong for far too long. Then he let go and kept walking as if nothing at all had happened. I pushed through the glass door into the bustling Austin, Texas heat and tried to catch my breath. The outdoor patio hummed with the noise of midday, glasses clinking, low conversations, the laughter of a group celebrating something. I should have gone straight to my son's car where he was waiting, but curiosity pressed on my chest like a weight. I rounded the building and slipped behind a large, decorative olive tree that smelled of dry earth and sun-warmed leaves. From there, I could watch the front without being seen and decide whether the warning was an act of kindness or just idle gossip. 2 minutes later, I saw Marcus Hale, my daughter-in-law, Isabella's, father. He pushed through the same glass door with three glossy shopping bags that glinted like wet stone. The gold letters on the sides caught the light. They were not grocery bags. They were from a high-end designer. He moved easily, not like a man weighed down by overdue notices, and clicked a key fob until a new pale blue sports car gave a gentle chirp and flashed. He stacked the bags in the trunk with the care people use for delicate glass, then took a phone call with the relaxed smile of someone who believes everything will work out in his favor. I am 71, a retired teacher from a small school in Dallas, and I have budgeted every penny all my life to make sure my boy had what he needed. Daniel married Isabella 2 years ago. I told myself she was simply reserved, the way some people are when they enter a new family. Her father was always polite. Her mother always asked about my health. Yet, requests for money kept arriving at my son's door. There were stories about rent, medical bills, and car repairs. Small emergencies that required fast cash. Daniel hates to see anyone struggle. So do I. Now, the waiter's whisper circled my head, refusing to unclench. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just jealousy. Or maybe I had trained myself for decades to ignore the warning signs because peace felt safer than asking questions. I stayed there until my legs cramped, watching and listening, promising I would not accuse anyone until I saw enough of the truth. Like a pulse under a blanket, it was beating somewhere close. All I had to do was find it. On the ride home, Daniel asked if the meal had been heavy on me. I forced a smile and said it was fine, but my mind kept circling back to the waiter's whisper and the sight of Marcus's gleaming sports car. My son drove us toward Isabella's neighborhood, humming faintly, unaware that his wife's family had just been painted in a very different light. I kept glancing at him, wondering how many hours of overtime he had worked this month to cover another one of their emergencies. As the houses slipped past the window, I thought of all the little moments I had brushed aside. There was the afternoon. Isabella called me in tears, saying her father's medication was too expensive. I had pulled $60 from my grocery envelope and dropped it in their mailbox that night. The next morning, while waiting for the bus, I saw Marcus drive past in a crisp suit and polished shoes that looked nothing like the image of a man weighed down by illness. I had told myself maybe it was borrowed or a gift. I did not want to think badly of family. Another time, Isabella stopped by my apartment and casually mentioned a dinner she and Daniel had attended at a fancy steakhouse in downtown Austin, the kind where one plate cost more than my entire week of groceries. When I asked if it was for a birthday or a work event, she shrugged and said friends had invited them and insisted on paying. Later, scrolling through photos on my phone, I stumbled on her social media post from the same evening. She had written, "Treating Dad the way he deserves," with a photo of Marcus holding up a glass of wine. My heart had pinched at the sight, but I told myself it must have been an old picture. Now, crouched behind that olive tree, replaying the waiter's words, those small contradictions stacked up like bricks in a wall. How many times had I ignored the details because I wanted harmony from my son's marriage? The new curtains in their living room, the watch on Marcus's wrist, the string of pearl earrings Isabella claimed were fake. Each memory returned with sharp edges I could no longer smooth away. Marcus finished his call, slipped the phone into his jacket, and walked back toward the bistro, as if nothing unusual had happened. But the sight of those glossy bags disappearing into the trunk of that sports car was burned into me. The waiter had been right about at least one thing. Something about this family's story did not add up. And if I wanted to protect Daniel, I would have to keep watching, no matter how much it hurt to discover the truth. The following Saturday, I told Daniel I wanted to visit the farmer's market on High Street. He offered to drive me, but I insisted I would take the bus. What I really wanted was the space to follow my own plan. The image of Marcus slipping into that shiny sports car had rooted itself deep in my mind. I needed more than one glimpse, more than one whispered warning. I needed to see for myself the rhythm of his life when he thought no one was watching. From the market, I walked 3 blocks to a small cafe with wide windows and a clear view of the road. I ordered black coffee and waited. At noon, Marcus's sports car rolled past. He did not turn toward the hardware store he claimed to be working at part-time. Instead, he pulled into the lot of the Dallas Country Club, a place so exclusive I had only ever seen it in magazine articles at the dentist office. The guard at the gate waved him through without hesitation. My chest tightened. People drowning in debt do not stroll into country clubs in tailored jackets. I lingered until he drove away 2 hours later, looking satisfied, his posture straight, his face glowing the way people look after closing a deal. He had no shopping bags this time, just a leather briefcase. When he passed me on the street corner, I ducked behind a bus shelter, my heart pounding. He was humming, as if the world itself had no weight for him at all. That evening, as I walked home, the dry Austin air sharp in my lungs, I overheard 2 women outside a boutique on 3rd Avenue. One, a gray-haired woman in a bright red scarf, said, "Did you see Isabella last week at the mall? That emerald dress she wore must have cost at least $200. The other adjusted her glasses and replied, "And she bought those French beauty creams, too. My granddaughter works there and says Isabella is one of their best customers." I slowed my pace, my ears straining. These were not women gossiping idly. Their voices carried the irritation of neighbors who had seen too much. I hurried the last few blocks to my apartment, my pulse fast. The picture was getting clearer. Isabella's family begged Daniel for rent money, claimed unpaid bills and overdue medicine, but still they glided through boutiques, salons, and country clubs like royalty in disguise. My son's overtime hours, his exhaustion, the gray shadows under his eyes. He was paying for their theater. I pressed my hand against the cool metal railing outside my building and made a silent vow. I would no longer silence my instincts. Whatever truth was hiding in plain sight, I was going to pull it into the light, no matter how much it hurt. The invitation came 2 weeks later. Isabella called Daniel on a Thursday evening, her voice sugary over the speakerphone. She said her parents wanted us over for Sunday lunch. Nothing fancy, just a family meal. Daniel lit up like a boy asked to his first dance. I forced a smile, though my stomach nodded. I had been gathering suspicions like dry twigs, and I knew this visit might be the spark that set them ablaze. On Sunday, Daniel drove us out of Austin to a quiet neighborhood in Dallas. The lawns were manicured, leaves were raked into perfect piles, porches swept clean, hardly the setting of people who struggled to pay bills. Isabella greeted us at the door in a silk blouse the color of autumn leaves. She hugged me warmly, and the faint trace of expensive perfume clung to my coat. I had seen that bottle once in a store window. Its price was nearly half my grocery budget for the month. Inside, the house gleamed as though it had been staged for a magazine. The living room walls had fresh paint. The floors shone, and a brand new leather sofa sat where the old fabric one used to be. Crystal vases dotted the tables filled with roses that looked too perfect to be store-bought. A massive flat-screen television dominated one wall, the kind I had only ever seen in appliance showrooms. I forced my lips into a polite smile, but inside, every detail screamed contradiction. "Mom, doesn't it look wonderful?" Daniel whispered proudly, as if Isabella's family's prosperity reflected on him. I nodded, too weary to argue. At the dining table, Marcus poured us wine from a dark bottle with a gold-foiled label. I recognized it instantly. Just last week I had seen the same bottle at a specialty store. $60 at least. "A gift from a friend," Marcus said when I asked. His smile was smooth, practiced. Isabella's mother, Samantha, carried in platters of roasted lamb, saffron rice, and imported cheeses, all arranged like a feast from another world. "We found some incredible discounts," she explained when I raised an eyebrow. Discounts, again, always discounts. As the meal stretched on, I kept my hands folded in my lap, studying every detail. Isabella's earrings caught the light. Pearls, not fake like she had once claimed. Her nails were manicured in a style that cost more than my weekly prescriptions. The conversation danced lightly around Daniel's job, his long hours, and the little apartment he and Isabella shared. Each time he mentioned working overtime, Isabella's eyes flickered, and her parents exchanged a glance so quick most would have missed it, but I saw. I always saw. Halfway through dessert, a neighbor dropped by with a bottle of champagne. He greeted Marcus with the respect one shows to someone of influence, not desperation. My fork froze midway to my mouth. This was no struggling family, barely keeping the lights on. This was a family living well, living off the sweat of my son's back. When we left that afternoon, Daniel clasped my hand, beaming. "See, Mom, they're doing their best. Aren't they wonderful?" I squeezed his fingers and forced a smile, but my chest ached. He could not see the truth yet, but I could, and I knew the day was coming when his illusions would shatter.
3 nights after that Sunday lunch, I sat at my kitchen table, counting out coins for my prescriptions when my phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar. I hesitated, then opened the message. It was a photo of a grocery receipt dated just 2 days earlier. The total read $572.86. The list included imported seafood, French cheeses, and 2 bottles of champagne at $90 each. At the bottom, the name was printed clearly, Marcus Hale. Beneath the image, the sender had typed, "Mrs. Vance, I thought you should see this." My throat went dry. I recognized the number. It belonged to the waiter who had warned me. I stared at the glowing screen, my heart thudding. This was no rumor. This was proof, black and white, undeniable. The same Marcus who had smiled at me over roasted lamb and stories of hardship was buying champagne like water. The next day, another message came. A receipt for nearly $600, dated the same week Isabella had called Daniel sobbing about overdue rent. My stomach clenched. Each line item felt like a betrayal. Caviar, truffles, imported wine. I pressed the phone against my chest and closed my eyes. My son had worked double shifts that week. He had skipped dinners with friends, had come home with circles under his eyes, while Isabella's family filled their cabinets with luxury. As if fate wanted to seal the truth, that evening, my landline rang. The voice on the other end was a woman I barely knew, Mrs. Harrison, who lived down the block from Isabella's parents. She said she had gotten my number from a mutual acquaintance. Her voice shook with anger. "Mrs. Vance, you deserve to know. Last weekend, they threw a birthday party for Marcus. Catered, hundreds of guests. They had professional chefs, imported wines, even an ice sculpture. People were whispering. It must have cost thousands. Yet your son told my daughter they were struggling with hospital bills." I listened, hardly able to breathe. Each word landed like a hammer on glass. The illusion I had tried to keep for Daniel shattered piece by piece. They weren't merely stretching the truth. They had built an entire theater of lies, scripted down to the last excuse. That night, Daniel stopped by after work. He looked exhausted, shoulders heavy from the long hours. He told me Isabella had mentioned another emergency, this time car repairs for her father. He sighed, saying he might need to dip into his savings. I reached across the table and held his hand. I wanted to blurt it all out, to show him the receipts glowing on my phone, but I stopped. His eyes were kind but tired, not ready for war. I knew then what had to happen. I needed more. Enough that even Daniel, blinded by love and loyalty, could not deny it. Proof so heavy that lies would collapse beneath its weight.
The following Wednesday, Daniel arrived at my apartment after work. He looked worn, his tie crooked, his face pale from long hours. He sank into the chair across from me and rubbed his temples. "Isabella just called," he muttered. "Her dad needs another procedure. Insurance won't cover it. They need $200 by Friday." I felt the air leave my chest. The words were nearly identical to what Isabella had used the last time. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone. "Daniel," I said softly, "I need to show you something." He looked up, puzzled. I opened the photos the waiter had sent me. One by one, I placed the screen before him. The receipts glowed in the dim light of my kitchen. $400, $600, champagne, caviar, designer groceries, each dated the same days his wife had claimed her family was desperate. At first, he frowned. "Mom, these could be anyone's." "Look closer," I whispered. His eyes slid to the name printed at the bottom, Marcus Hale. His jaw tightened. He scrolled through the next, then the next. His voice cracked. "Where did you get these?" I told him about the waiter, about overhearing neighbors at the boutique, about the party Mrs. Harrison described. Every word was slow, careful, like stepping across thin ice. Daniel's shoulders stiffened. "You mean to say Isabella's family, they lied for 2 years?" His voice was a blend of disbelief and anger. I didn't answer. I just let the evidence speak. He stood, pacing the small room, running both hands through his hair. "No, there has to be another explanation. Maybe Dad had a good month. Maybe they borrowed." His voice trailed off, unconvincing even to himself. I wanted to reach for him, but I knew he needed space to let the realization bloom. "Son," I said gently, "I know you love Isabella, but love should not demand blindness. Look at the dates. Look at the amounts. While you worked overtime, they feasted." His chest rose and fell rapidly. Finally, he stopped pacing, his eyes wet. "I need to know for sure. I can't keep living in this fog." That night, after he left my apartment, Daniel went home and did something he had never done before. He searched through Isabella's things. In the back of their closet, he found glossy shopping bags from boutiques in downtown Austin. Inside were clothes with still price tags, jewelry tucked into velvet boxes, and then the ledger, spiral-bound, filled with Isabella's neat handwriting. Page after page recorded every fabricated emergency: rent, medicine, car repairs. Next to each line was the amount Daniel had sent. At the bottom of the last page was a new entry in bold: "Mom, dental surgery, next month,
$1,800. A note followed in the margin. If he resists, remind him how much he owes us. When Daniel called me later that night, his voice was hollow. "Mom," he whispered, "it's worse than we thought. They kept records, like it was a business."
The next evening, Daniel asked Isabella to sit with him in the living room. His voice was calm, but his hands trembled. He laid the ledger on the coffee table. The receipts I had given him were stacked neatly beside it. Isabella's eyes flickered the moment she saw them. For a heartbeat, she froze, then forced a laugh. "Where did you find that old notebook? Those are just household notes." Daniel opened to a page labeled "Car Repairs, $650. "On this date," he said quietly, "you told me your father's transmission broke. You cried on the phone until I wired the money. On this same day, you spent nearly $700 on clothes. And here, hospital bills, $300. The very day Dad bought champagne." His voice shook, but his gaze never left hers. Isabella's mask cracked. She leaned forward, her tone sharp. "You had no right to go through my things." "And you had no right to turn my life into an ATM," Daniel snapped. The words hung heavy in the room. Marcus arrived minutes later, summoned by Isabella's urgent text. He walked in wearing a pressed shirt and that same confident smile. But when he saw the ledger, the receipts, and Daniel's pale face, his expression faltered. "Son, whatever this looks like, I can explain." "Then explain," Daniel demanded. "Explain why every emergency perfectly aligned with shopping trips and parties. Explain why I have given over $15,000 in 2 years while your house keeps getting shinier." For a long moment, Marcus said nothing. Then, with a sigh, he sank into a chair. His tone changed, becoming colder now, almost businesslike. "Because you made it easy. You wanted to be the hero, and we needed assistance. It was never personal, just practical." Isabella's head whipped toward him. "Dad, stop!" But Daniel had heard enough. "Not personal," he repeated, his voice cracking. "I gave up nights of sleep, worked overtime, skipped vacations because I thought you were struggling. I thought I was saving my family." Isabella's facade finally shattered. "Fine," she spat, tears streaking her mascara. "Yes, we lied. We knew you'd always say yes. My father told me from the start you were perfect because you can't say no. You believed every word, and we lived better for it. Why should I apologize for being smarter than you?" Daniel felt the ground shift beneath him. The woman he had married, the family he had trusted, had never seen him as a partner or a son-in-law, only as a resource to exploit, again and again, until nothing was left. He stood, his voice firm, though his heart was breaking. "This marriage is over. I will not live as your victim one more day." That night, Daniel packed a single duffel bag and left his apartment. Isabella followed him to the door, her sobs loud enough to rattle the neighbor's walls, but her words were poisoned with fury. "You will regret this, Daniel. You'll never find someone who gives you what I do." He paused only long enough to answer. "I already regret ever believing you." Then he walked out into the cold Austin night, the ledger still under his arm, like a piece of evidence too heavy to drop.